Okay, welcome. Today is Thursday, November 21st. It is 9 a.m. This is the Governing Board regular meeting. I call the meeting to order. And our first order of business is if you are able to stand, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we have everybody here, so we have a quorum. I will read the meeting procedure document. The Governing Board conducts all of its meetings in compliance with Arizona open meeting laws per Title ARS 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in board meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules 2 and 3. All questions and comments are to be directed to the Governing Board President. All comments are entertained at the discretion of the Governing Board President. Speakers shall state their name and member number and speak in a courteous manner. The Governing Board President may limit commentary time and the number of commentators or speakers on any issue. The Governing Board President may also redirect commentary at individual agenda items to the general guest comments agenda line item, except when the board has discussed the agenda item and a formal vote is to be taken. All fire and room safety precautions and regulations are strictly obeyed at all meetings per the guidance of the Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. The Governing Board reserves the right to adjourn any meeting if the safety of the board, meeting attendees, or others is deemed at risk, or if there is too much disruption to continue. After one verbal warning by the President, the board also reserves the right to ask any meeting attendees to leave any meeting should their behavior be deemed dangerous or unacceptable. Disciplinary action may follow. Okay, with that, we will go to our first agenda item, which is the Torch Academy class meeting attendance recognition. Bob, can the Torch members please raise your hand? Okay. Okay. Great, thank you. Torch recognition, Torch graduation is today at 3 o'clock over at Palm Ridge. So we'll be there. Some of us will be there for that. So thank you. Next agenda item is the approval of the minutes from October 17th, 2024. There is one correction, and in the title of the document, there is a typo. The word son has been inadvertently omitted in the title of the document. So are there any other changes? Okay, we will have that typo corrected. Are the meeting minutes accepted as amended? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving right along, we'll go to our first new business, which is Director Chatton will talk to us about the club space expansion requests.
Thank you, President Leary. We had a rather long meeting on Tuesday or Monday? Monday this week. Went on for about 2 hours, heard from a lot of committee members, heard from a lot of members of the audience. And in the end, the motion to be made is, after extensive deliberation, the Chartered Clubs Committee recommends that the Governing Board does not approve the clay and glass enameling Fusion Club requests for expanded club space.
Is there a second? Thank you. Okay, board is discussed. Any questions for Director Chatton? Director Hurley.
Yeah, I guess this is more parliamentarian, but you're basically telling us not to do something. Do we need a motion to do that first?
Director Chatton, can you please reread your motion?
After extensive I move that after extensive deliberation, the Chartered Clubs Committee recommends that the governing board does not approve the clay and glass enameling Fusion Club requests for expanded club space. I would suggest it does take some action because it was
Wait. Okay, can I get a second? Thank you. Now you may speak.
It was a, what is it, Form 13A that was submitted by both clubs, and I believe we either have to approve or deny those applications.
So are there any questions, discussion about this topic? Yes, Director Novello.
If I may, I would never in a million years try to speak for someone else, much less Director Hurley, but usually the way a motion is written is more in the positive. I think that's what we were questioning. It doesn't matter. I think the action is clear. Usually the motion is made to do something and then we vote no to disapprove it, but you've made the motion in the other way. Was there a reason why?
That's what Karen gave me.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, Director Rhodes.
So given that, I'm not sure where and when I should ask this question, so I'll ask it right now and then ask for forgiveness if that's in the right time. Director Chatton, could you give us a narrative on some of the more specific reasons why that request should be denied?
Well, I can only give you my opinion of what took place. The entire Chartered Clubs Committee did a tour of all 4 of the potentially affected club spaces before our meeting, and then Casey provided us with a ream of data. I think what the conclusion in the end was that we really don't have adequate data to make these kinds of decisions. I mean, we had participation percentages, we had a lot of other information, but we did not have, for example, Clay Club has perhaps 100 people on their waiting list, and Lynn did mention that that was a fact. But I think in the end, what the committee felt, and I'm just generalizing because they're not all here, was that before any other potential solutions are looked at, the clubs need to look at their scheduling to move more people into different time slots. If you want to belong to this club, well, then maybe you have to be in this time slot. So I think that was the reason that it was turned down, because they didn't feel the need to move photography into Computers West until we had more data that would present itself and support that move. Does that make sense?
I have more questions, but I'm going to defer to Director.
If I may, I was at the meeting in support of Director Chatton's comment about the data. The data that we have is from Club Track, and while the numbers were presented as participation numbers, they are in fact check-in numbers, because we don't know how long somebody is in the space actually participating. So it's kind of a misnomer in terms of what it was presented. I think the only thing that we could confirm from the data is that the check-ins occur primarily in the morning to the early afternoon. And that beginning, say, at 2 o'clock, roughly speaking, the space is, there are fewer check-ins, let's just put it that way. So the data is, the committee felt it was insufficient for them to make an informed decision.
I guess the concern I have, and I can appreciate that, but we seem to be stuck on not enough data, you know? And I think in the absence of that, we have to look at other things. The part that concerns me is I believe there's a suppressed demand, especially when I hear that there's 100 people on the waiting list to join. So if we could get, and I can give you an example of the wood shop because I have firsthand example of that. Anytime we have new members, we make them wait until we put them through our own training to make sure they're not going to cut their fingers off, you know. But it's usually no more than 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe a month. So I'm worried about the suppressed demand, and I think that by doing this, we're not taking action. You know, and I don't know if I can tell you right now with what I know of this, you know, what the right answer is, but I think we have to do something and not keep going back to, we don't have enough data. We're never going to have enough data, never.
So I completely agree with you. You know, the decision that the committee made is the decision that they felt was the right one to make. However, one of the last time we went through a question like this or a request like this was 5 years ago in 2019. And the way that we accommodated the move at that point was to convert 2 meeting rooms to club space. We don't have those spaces to be able to convert for a club space use. So what was facing the Chartered Clubs Committee this time is that they would have to cannibalize the space of 2 vibrant clubs in order to accommodate these other 2. And we're at a point where unless we build out, we're not going to have enough space to be able to, you know, ask for growth. And that's why Director Chatton mentioned that it's a scheduling issue rather than a space issue at this point. At some point, depending upon where clubs go, as we get new generations in here, we may find that, you know, certain clubs will have a different end to their life cycle. Others may sprout up new, but without, you know, a plan and how we're going to accommodate this. And so that goes to the strategic plan and all those things as well. We are going to continue to do this. We're just going to continue to churn.
Comment? I think there are ways to accommodate expansion quite easily. Well, not easily. You're going to have to spend some money. There are ways to accommodate expansion without relocating current clubs. But I would say that's not something for the Chartered Clubs Committee to be considering. I mean, I often wonder whether this should have gone to properties before chartered clubs to start with, because I think there's more input from the operations side of it, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. But given the fact that this is the process we now have, I think that the entire committee pretty much thought that, well, let's look at let's see if this can be resolved through scheduling before we spend some money to try some other solution.
Director Horvath.
So I was at that meeting also. It was very well conducted. A couple of takeaways that I got was I liked the statement where it said, if we start moving clubs, we're going to have a winner and a loser. And that was very, very dramatic, I thought. And that's true. We're just out of space, and that has to be a consideration. The other thing that I heard that I really liked is, these facilities or areas have not been really hard looked at in years. Maybe they could be reconfigured, okay, to stop the traffic jams and possibly add some more members that way. I visited myself all 4 clubs. And so I think that should be looked at too. In other words, a design change within the room itself and see what can be done there. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Yes, Director Piaskowski.
The other thing too is, I'm not too sure that the clubs use evening time. And we understand that on Sunday, Beardsley is not opened. But I do believe there's a facility assistant there. So those 3 rooms over there, they have designated rooms, so they should have their own keys, I believe, correct? Anyone can answer that? They don't have their own key? Really? Okay. Okay, so maybe that would be a situation where they could, if the room is, if the facility's open, they know that they have to have 2 people in that room, right? And if they had a key, that they could be in there on a Sunday, if the facility's open. Because right now it's not.
And that was one of the things brought up during the meeting, that if there's demand, then Carl, or is Carl Carlson? Oh, there he is. Carl, I'm just saying, Carl addressed that, said that if there's demand, that he could look into getting that. But there, that'll come with, cost for employee and all that. But yeah, so that's a possibility. Yeah.
I just kind of want to put out there, so my takeaway was that we as staff need to do a little more homework on this, and we recognize the need for some space utilization, and I think there was one done in the past that needs to be looked at. I'm 90 days in, I think, roughly. So I haven't quite wrapped my arms around everything, but one of the things I looked at was, obviously there was a need, and there's some issues that need to be looked at, and so I guess what I would say to the clubs and everybody is that it isn't as if we just took it, or I took it as, well, it's done and we're not going to do anything more. As staff, I feel we need to go back and look at it and then bring forward some possible options to the board as well. So I think the issue, I think, right now is to respect the decision of the committee. Obviously, we respect that as staff, but I do think that there's some opportunities there that we need to examine ourselves.
Director Novello.
To build on that and to other directors' comments, if I may request for the general manager and his staff to please consider the option of allowing these clubs to have access to their rooms. You decide how to do that, 7 days a week. There have been many clubs and many meetings of the Chartered Clubs Committee where this has come up and been a point of contention and pain. So it's not just these couple of clubs, but all our spaces are constrained, as we all know. So in the meantime, please consider that request. It's been a long-standing one, at least a year now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I believe, I'm not sure the exact date, but I believe in 2023, there was a space utilization study done that I am told the study was done, but nothing ever became of it. So that might be a good place to start, to find that 2023 study and go from there.
I believe that's a study I have. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack. Yeah. So again, the point is, I just haven't had a chance to digest that, but that's one of the starting points for sure.
Okay, any more discussion on the board? Okay, discussion from the audience? Oh, I'm sorry, Director Rhodes.
Yeah, I think that, to me, the bottom line here is that the data we have is not satisfactory. There is an option of utilizing or of taking advantage of a prior study. But I think, to me, the elephant in the room is the suppressed demand. How do we deal with the suppressed demand? And it's not just in the Clay Club, and it's not just in all these others. We have a suppressed demand, and I wish I could tell you what the answer was. I hope that Mr. Erno can come up with some magic on this. We're relying on you to do that, Stephen. You know, but anyway, and the other thing I want to say is my comments are by no way an indictment on the committee, because I think that you guys did a really thorough job with that. I just don't agree with it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Novello.
One quick question, if I may, hopefully quick. What action results from this motion? Does it remove this SIP request from the general manager and staff's, so they will not come back? If this proceeded forward, this takes it off the plate for this upcoming budget year. Is that the requested action?
That is correct.
Thank you. It doesn't mean it's dead forever. It just means that this particular budget request is, thank you.
Director Williams.
Yes, I too was at that meeting. It was extremely well done. There was a lot of dialogue. I was very impressed with the new committee members and their comments and how prepared they were for that meeting. Just as an aside, the vote was 8-1. So it was, like I say, a one-item, 2-hour meeting, and so it was well thought out, and I think they put a lot of work into it, and it makes sense right at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, comments from the audience. Your name and record number, please.
Nick Turner, 131829. I am a member of the Chartered Clubs Committee, but so I'd like to make it very clear I'm not attempting to represent the committee in any way. I am just speaking personally here at the moment. Questions about, for example, never going to have enough data. I also chaired the working group, which some people have characterized as being space utilization. It wasn't. It was about IT and how we get the data to more effectively manage our space utilization so that we can answer questions like this one. It was submitted 14 months ago and nothing happened. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get that data. I'm not saying it's cheap to get that data. It might be very expensive and very complex, but nothing has happened. So we are never going to have enough data if we don't do anything. So my first request is, let's do something, please. I also note from the end of that Chartered Clubs Committee meeting, there were questions like frustration, I feel bad, deferring is not going to make, is not going to cause these problems to go away. And I would personally interpret the no vote more of an abstention than a no vote. There was information we didn't have. We didn't know 3 things. Are the clubs at capacity? Can more be done by better use of the space and the use of longer hours, which has been mentioned here? But if you have 25 new members in those clubs which are close to capacity, making things, do we have the capacity in the kilns to actually fire those products? And that again is another constraint on those clubs. So the use of additional space will allow them to have more kilns, which allows them to support more members. If the solution is photography and computers, how will they work together in that other space? I don't think there's been any work done on how those 2 clubs will coexist. I'll stop now, and with the permission of the board, I'll come back after Lynn. May I continue
If it's
now?
okay with the board, should we give Mr. Turner time?
Mhm.
Yes, okay. Please continue.
One of the things I've noticed through work and the way the committees and the organizational structure works here in the association is that when we have decisions to make like this, it involves a lot of back and forth, and new ideas tend to arise later in the process. Some of the issues we had about the data on this process was because we went to see the rooms, and when we went to see the rooms, in some cases again, new ideas about how the space might be utilized arose. And there wasn't sufficient time for those ideas to be investigated. So it does involve a lot of back and forth. One of the other problems is when you only have a meeting once a month, that back and forth takes a long time. So we need to have some way of rapidly iterating through these processes, and that might be a working group, as was suggested by a member of the audience. But I don't think that we exhausted the process to come to a correct decision about whether these two clubs should be allocated more space or not, which is going to be a 2-year process anyway, with architectural drawings, drawing up contracts, getting permits, all of that kind of stuff. It's a 2-year budgetary process. I don't think we exhausted that process at this stage sufficiently. One other point that just came up with keys, the club members having keys. It's not quite that simple at Beardsley. There are security gates which would need to be open for fire egress so that you can exit that building 4 different ways. All of that would need to be open, so you would need staff on premise while that building is open. My request to the governing board today is to amend the motion to bounce this decision back to the Chartered Clubs Committee and to the administration, so we can use this as a pilot of working through this new process of how we go through the capital requests. If we don't do that, we're just bouncing it another 12 months, which means it will be 36 months before anything happens. And in 36 months' time, maybe we will suddenly discover that they do need more space. I think we need to just iterate through this process more for another few weeks. Thank you. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. My thoughts are very much, Nick said it so eloquently. The data and the information that was provided to the Charter Club, I don't believe was adequately researched or understood. I think a lot of the data that they had on the table were good numbers, but it was obvious, if you watched the club meeting, that many of the members did not understand the data. And there was talk back and forth on that. They didn't have the time to really work on it, to research it, to make a really good decision. And I'm sorry for them. I think they probably worked very hard. I think they do a good job. This, in my opinion, was not one of their more stellar meetings. And it's not because you're saying no. That's okay. If it's no, it's no. I can take no. Been rejected before. It's okay. But I think that I'm not sure what pushed the change in process to put this in the hands of the Charter Club, a process that belongs with the rec center, who knows all of our clubs intimately in and out, and with our construction people who know our facilities in and out. And we're asking a group of, gosh, I think almost everybody on the Charter Committee is new this year with the exception of Vicky. And so we're taking brand new people and asking them to make this very difficult decision. I don't believe that that's where it belongs. Along with that, we're happy to check in every hour. If you want us to check in every hour so that you can see how many people are in there, I'll set a timer and have people check in every hour and you can see that. But my thought is it does cost us in Club Track every time we check in, so that could be quite a bit. May I have permission to speak a little longer?
Any objection, board?
Okay.
No objection. Continue.
So truly, I guess my request today is that this be revisited. And if you're not willing to work out the lumps and bumps of this new process, please hand it back to the people who have done it in the past and let them work it through as you work a little more, give a little more time to the thought of using this process. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm saying the way that it is right now doesn't work. I mean, you get a good innovative idea, you throw the idea against the wall, it sounds good, you give it a try. If it works, you do it. If it doesn't, you rethink it. And I think this is one that really needs to be rethought and looked at. And I appreciate your time and hope that you will give the consideration of maybe redoing this through the old channels until you figure out really how this can smoothly work. And one other thing I would like to mention is and I can go into greater detail offline here where I'm not in your way, trying to put 370 members, aging members, into a cubicle of time in our environment is really not going to be a functional way to do clay. We're older, we're retired, we want to have fun. They don't want to be assigned a time. Thank you for your time.
I would like to respond to the comments about the process. The process has not changed. Every request from a club for space always goes to the Chartered Clubs Committee first. This is not a change in that regard.
What I'm referring to, I think, Jack, if I may, is in the past, all the processes that we had were brought before the committees by Carl and by Casey. And what was being proposed was also put up on the screen so that everybody in the audience could see specifically what we were talking about or what was being talked about. And then it was brought to us, and we did make decisions regarding that, yes, but this meeting was not handled that way.
The process has been changed in that sense, in that every club who requests space their request comes to the Chartered Clubs Committee. What has changed is the sequence in which things are handled. Previously, the request would come before every single committee that was involved. And as a result, we would have 3 or 4 different versions of the truth that were confusing, inaccurate, and made it even more difficult for decisions. So the Chartered Clubs Committee gets first crack at this. If there's a request about a facility, that goes to the Properties Committee first. If there's something that involves the sports pavilion, it goes to that committee first. They are the ones who make the decision, should it move forward. If they say yes, then it goes to those other 2 committees or any other involved committees in parallel. So all we've done is just pushed one step back. The outcome is going to be a lot cleaner this way.
Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that, Jack. The fact remains that none of the data was provided to anybody but who were sitting there, and the 5 members, which I believe is a quorum, of the governing board who was sitting in the audience. That's a little unfair.
The relevance of the governing board members in the audience is irrelevant because they were not actively participating.
Again, we'll agree to disagree. I don't think it was appropriate. It should not have been that way, but that's not the point today. The point today is this was not handled as business as usual, and you're telling me you think it was. I'm telling you I disagree with that. And I just would really appreciate reconsideration, not just stopping us in our tracks, but reconsideration about reworking this. If you're not willing to throw it over to construction and the rec center to do their dog and pony show up here and show everybody what we've got going on, then please just reconsider.
Thank you. Yes, Director Horvath.
Yes, well, of course, yesterday's yesterday, so I think we need to move on here. I understand Director Chapman, he said, this is what we found, and I think it's appropriate now if we consider putting a working group together. No way? Okay, so, okay, thank you.
Governing board cannot have working groups.
No, I meant the committees.
The committee has already done a working group on space utilization, and that report has been written. Mr. Turner referenced that.
Okay.
We have some online questions.
Yes, we have 3 questions from one person. Gary Bach, number 135435. He says, it seems like one thing that is being missed is that this is an active adult community, and that to tell people that they need to be active at night or on Sunday, and he didn't quite finish that. Then he says, also the clubs are social clubs. I think we need to look into whether we need to add more space, since other clubs such as pickleball also want more space or not, and say that we are going to. And the final comment is, get more space or not, this would save the time of requests if there is not space, and this could be accomplished through the master plan study that has been talked about. Those are Gary's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Okay, if there's no more discussion, I'll ask Director Chatton to, oh yes, hold on.
Well, two things. I would like to change the wording of my motion, withdraw the first one and change the wording of my motion, but before
Well, I want to get some advice from our parliamentarian.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay,
Can
be
you make a motion to amend?
Yes, but before I do that, I would like to have our general manager address the IT issue and the data issue, because I think a lot of people aren't aware of what is currently going on with that.
Yes, thank you, Director Chatton. So as I actually discussed at the Charter Club Committee meeting on Monday, because there was a lot of discussion about the data, and we are actually in the process of attempting to hire a IT director that will specifically be looking at our IT situations and our softwares and hardware and all that. We do actually have interviews on Monday with 3 potential candidates, and so hopefully we'll get that person on board. And obviously, this will be one of the first things I want to look at is how do we manage some of this data better and get better information so that the committees and the board can make data-driven decisions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we look forward to that, and I think the governing board has expressed their desire, their willingness to expend some funds to update our IT, which is very positive for the entire community. So I would like to amend my motion. I would move that after extensive deliberation, the Chartered Clubs Committee recommends that the governing board defer any action on the clay and glass enameling Fusion Club requests for expanded club space. So a yes motion would be to agree that it be deferred.
Can I get a second on the amended
I
motion?
second the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll take a vote. If you vote yes, it's to defer. Yes, Director Rhodes, yes, we do have discussion.
Defer to what? To what date? I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to vote for it if I don't know. It could be to defer until the next millennium. I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but.
So Director Chatton, how long would you like to defer it?
Until more definitive data is available. You know, this time frame, I don't know that I can put a time frame on it.
Could we say that we will review this again in 6 months or 12 months, 6 months? And I'm not trying to put you in a corner, John. I really am not. I just want to nail it down. And so bring it back in 6 months, and hopefully Mr. Erno can give us a more concrete realization of the vision of what we're trying to do. And I would support this, to defer for point X.
Okay,
So-
what, you want to,
I would amend my motion to say defer for 6 months any action on glass enameling Fusion Club requests for expanded club space.
second? Okay, discussion? Director Hurley?
Yes, being on the board for as long as I have, there's a bit of historical perspective that I might add, and that is, we've probably had at least 3 space utilization studies over the last year, and they really don't come to anything. The other point I want to make is, when clubs get full, you have to look at the space utilization. You can't provide space for the maximum times when everybody's in the club, because otherwise, when during the summer, those clubs would sit empty. So you have to be able to schedule your time. You have to be able to allocate time to people in ways that I don't know if they're using them now. But to just defer this for another 6 months, I think is just kicking the can down the road. So if you want to make a decision one way or the other, I'd be for that. But just to defer it, I'm not for that. Thank you.
So Director Hurley, what would you be for?
I don't have a dog in this fight either way as far as what we should do for the space. But the point I got from Lynn Kellis talking was that this really is in the wrong place. It should have gone to the staff first for them to work out what the possible situations were, and then bring it to the clubs and see what could happen. I mean, I don't have a solution to it. I just don't think we should kick it down the road.
Director Chatton?
Well, it did actually go to staff. I know Carl had worked on a potential solution to this problem, but part of that solution was combining photo and Computers West and removing photography club from where they are. And then on our tour with Carl, the committee had a lot of discussion that was more along the lines of operations and not policy, and that we saw other potential solutions to this problem, and Carl did provide some additional options for our meeting. However, we never got to any of those options because first you had to decide whether you wanted to agree to the expansion of those 2 clubs. And since that wasn't agreed to, we never got that far. But I think as far as having operations, having more data and looking at it and bring it to us, I'm still not convinced that that's, if operations suggest to us something that deals with operations, maybe we shouldn't be looking at it. Maybe it should be somebody else. But anyway, hopefully we get this resolved at some point. I'm with you that if this just sits now and nobody does anything, whether we find more space available or we think that just scheduling differently is the solution to it, I don't have that answer. And no matter how much data we get, we'd all prefer to make very objective decisions based strictly on data. Life doesn't work that way. There's a lot of subjectivity to this whole conversation and what we should be doing. So hopefully we can have some resolution to this at some point. Thank you for your comments.
Our general manager has a comment.
Sorry, that's my fault. So I just want to chime in on, so, you know, if the question was only related to Clay Club and they said they needed more space and it didn't affect anybody, certainly operationally, we would come back and say, well, here's your options. Okay, because that's not really a policy decision. We're just going to do that operationally. The policy decision that needs to be made at not a staff level is, because it affects other clubs, is how do you balance that out? That is not a staff decision. That's a policy decision for the club and for the board to decide on. So we can come back, you know, if we get direction from the committee or the board to say, come back with different options, which is what we did. We provided some options, but they did not get past the policy decision of, how do we, should we make changes to clubs that affect other clubs, and to President Leary's point, cannibalize space from other clubs? That's the challenge that and I get it, you know, it's tough. And I think the comment, I can't remember who made the comment on during the Charter Club Committee, was they wear their hearts on their sleeves. And I am very sympathetic to the whole thing as well, that people want to do these things, and yet it's hard to figure out how do you, you know, who wins and who loses. So the win or lose situation, that's a policy decision. We can absolutely figure out all kinds of solutions. We can build second stories, 5-story buildings, you know, that's a whole policy decision on spending that money. But I just want to clarify that to make sure that we stay clear on what we can do from a staff perspective. And I'm happy to do what is requested by the board or the committee. But again, that needs to be decided at that level first, please.
Okay, I've asked Director Chatton to yet again amend his motion to return the vote. Our motion would to vote on sending it back to committee, and within 6 months coming up with a solution, so that we at least have a responsible party and we have a time frame on it. Any discussion, Director Rhodes?
Yeah, I actually want to echo Tim's comments about this is an issue of space management. And again, as Tim said, we've had multiple, and this is really going to open that box. We're going to have to go back. Once we can nail this down, we're going to have to go back and review all of those requests for space utilization. Your point, Mr. Erno, on policy, I think I can look at John Chatton's, you know, that we didn't go any farther because money was involved. Well, in our world, in my world before I came here, you know, we had recommendations with the caveat, if you want to do it, it's this, but it's going to cost you $1 million. That's part of the decision-making process, and that's our job right here. So what I would say to you, Mr. Erno, is I would appreciate the fact that if you had somebody like Carl, one of your premier people in the entire community, and he looks at this and he has his review on it, and he tells you that XYZ, but it's going to cost, you know, X number of dollars, you don't take any action, you bring it back here, and we decide on what it is. But I need to know, is this going to cost $10 or $1 million? That's part of the decision-making process. So, my point here is, I think we're getting to the right track. This is opening Pandora's box, but I think that it's something we have to do. And to say we're going to send it back to charter clubs, I think is a bit of a misnomer. I think what I'm really asking is I want to have our people here look at it and then give me some what-if scenarios. So.
Sending it back to committee is just a procedural
Okay.
event at this point. It's really what it is. I totally agree with you. We need to open this box and address that. It's been too long.
We are just kicking it, as Tim says, we're kicking it down and we're not doing anything with
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yep.
Director Hurley?
Just a quick comment, nothing happens in a vacuum. If you do something for one club, it's going to affect somebody else. You need to get their input into it too, whether they're willing to accept that change.
Okay, any other comments? Anything online?
Nothing additional
Okay,
on.
any other comments from the audience?
Good morning, Bruce Lees, 135422. Actually, wasn't going to speak today, but something got my interest in this subject. Space utilization has been something that we haven't been able to conquer since the 4 years that I've lived here. The sad fact of the matter is that we're maxed out on all space available in our facilities, and we have no additional ground to build new facilities, and nor do I think we should actually approach it from that perspective. However, every room has storage or capacity limitations, just such as this room. If the room is full, you have to wait for people to leave before new people can come in. That should apply across the board for the clubs. Boomers Club, capacity 140, we share a room with the Women's Club. The board last year made a decision. Spend $225,000 to upgrade Lizard Acres Pub. It gets us no extra utilization in space. All it does is impose additional costs for the renovation, to move some bar, buy some new tables, maybe change the gaming facility a little bit, but it really doesn't give us any additional space nor capacity. I think it's a fool's errand to think of, we're just going to conjure up more space and exclude people from activities. Limits are the limits, and if you participate in hours that it's available, it should be first come, first serve, and we have to live with that reality. Thank you.
Lindsay Davidson, 72199. I've been here for well over 20 years. There's a lot of things that need to be changed and updated, but I do believe that it's the responsibility of each club to be able to say that they're actually utilizing their space to the max. So if we've got 6 days that is open from 9 to 8, let's say that we've got staff at Beardsley, is that whole area being utilized? For example, somebody coming in as a new member, they need to go through all the programming, but they need to work their way in to be able to have prime time. You look at golf. Everybody wants to golf from 10 to 4. We need, it depends on when you sign up. The same thing with tennis. We all have certain hours that we want to play. How are we utilizing the beautiful spaces that we do have? That's all.
Thank you.
We're going back and forth on this motion. I'm not so sure that there is a good motion to be made here. We can try this after extensive, as an amendment, after extensive deliberation, the Chartered Clubs Committee recommends that the Chartered Club Committee reconsider this space request of the clay and glass enameling fusion request within 6 months. Doesn't necessarily defer it for a full 6 months, but it's reconsidered within that 6-month period.
That's basically the rest of the fiscal year.
So you're striking does not approve, and you want to insert be deferred to the Chartered Clubs Committee for 6 months.
Correct.
Well, that's why we're having this. So try that.
I have so many cross-outs here that I'm not sure what I even started with. It'd be a lot easier to to just start this whole motion from the beginning, or just have the motion withdrawn and have the board send this back to the committee for action within the next 6 months. I move that the governing board sends the, I withdraw my motion. I move that my original motion be withdrawn. and that the matter before us
Is returned.
is returned to committee for further consideration before the end of the fiscal year. Didn't I do well?
Seconded.
Okay. Yeah, right, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Discussion. Yes, Director Rhodes.
This has to be with a caveat that we're also doing something, you know, not just returning it, that we're going to have more of an operational review of this request as well. And then we're going to have optional scenarios of including things that may require policy change.
By returning it to committee, we are inferring that the committee will work on it and not just sit on it.
But I want it's
For further consideration, I believe I said, or
okay,
John
for
said.
okay.
Okay, crafting motions on the fly. Director Novello.
I'm not going to attempt that. I have not had enough coffee to attempt that. But I request, in whatever manner is appropriate, that Director Chatton represent, or a member of his committee bring back something before, I did the quick count, this would be by May, so it is before the end of this fiscal year, we would expect to see and hear something. Does that make sense to you, Director Chatton, as the chairperson of that committee?
It does.
If you need other people's discussions, if the Chartered Clubs Committee needs other resources or is not, needs to work with staff or so forth, please come back as soon as possible is my individual request as a director. Thank you.
We would just soon get it off of our table as soon as possible, too.
Okay. No further discussion. I hate to do this, but Director Chatton, can you please repeat your motion? It's a process thing. We have to do it.
If I had written it down, I would be able to do that.
Okay.
I move that the governing board sends this space allocation request back to the Chartered Clubs Committee to be considered and report back to the board no later than 6 months.
Seconded.
Okay, now I got to do discussion again. Okay, no discussion? Okay, Director Chatton, you got to repeat it again because it was seconded.
Did you write it down?
Not my job, man.
The motion is to have the governing board send the request for additional space by Clay and Glass Enameling Fusion Club back to the Chartered Clubs Committee to report back to the board within 6 months.
Thank you.
I think that's close.
Okay. We're going to take a voice vote. If you vote yes, it's to send this back to committee. If you vote no, it's to continue discussion on this. So I will start with Director Hurley.
Yes.
Director Rhodes.
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Director Piaskowski.
Yes.
Director Chatton.
Yes.
Director Novello.
Yes.
Director Grom.
Yes.
Director Horvath.
Yes.
Thank goodness. Thought this was going to be easy.
You and me both.
But we came to a good conclusion. We will return it to committee for further processing sooner rather than later. So, okay, moving on. Cliff, got to wake up, Cliff. Okay, our CFO will present the 2024 financial review for September and October.
Thank you, President Larry. Good morning, everyone. We are about to step into the realm of objectivity, my happy place. So here to report the results through October. Presented this at Budget and Finance earlier this week, and just get started on that. So we're going to talk about the month-to-date, just a quick agenda here. We're going to talk about the month-to-date, for the month of October compared to budget in prior year. We'll also do year-to-date compared to budget in prior year. We'll move down into the capital section of the income statement for the same periods, and then talk about our capital improvement budget and where we're at for the year, and then finally how we're tracking on our budgeted FFB percent. So for the month of October, 51,000 unfavorable in total operating revenue. The largest kicker there is golf. We struggled a little bit. First of all, we got 320,000 rounds of golf in this budget. So very aggressively budgeted golf this year. And so with the heat, we didn't hit our budget for October. So, and year to date, you'll see where we're at, but you know, I anticipate with the better weather moving forward that we always rally. We always have, at least since I've been here. So, but still 59,000 on 600 plus thousand in revenue for the month. Not too bad to be off for 1 month. Expenses, 2,000 right at budget. We had some swings for the month. The biggest swing you'll see is in landscape maintenance. We took advantage, Todd took advantage of a purchasing program for our chemicals and fertilizers. So we were behind budget year to date through September, and you'll see where this puts us at. It puts us about 86,000 unfavorable year to date in October, but we'll taking advantage of that program, we'll come in under budget for the year. We actually had some significant savings, approximately $80,000 by making this big purchase in October. So it was a good move. So for the income from operations for the month of October, 49,000 unfavorable, factoring in the the revenue and the expenses. Year to date, 86,000 unfavorable. Again, just, you know, golf is struggling a little bit, but we look forward to that. I will say Sports Pavilion is doing their part to make up for that. So kudos to them. They've done a great job this year of balancing more lineage with not only the leagues, but also with open bowling. So that's really paid off. But 86 unfavorable through October. And on the expense side, 415,000 favorable. In salaries and wages, we do have some open seats, and we're about 7,000 hours behind budget, what we budgeted in terms of total hours, which is approximately 9 to 10 FTEs through 9 pay periods, or 720 FTE hours. So doing a good job there, trying to keep up with the shortage. It does make us a little more inefficient when it comes to overtime, but we're trying to get everything done with that workforce, and we are constantly working on open seats. You'll see there's down in operating expenses, 111,000. We had budgeted some security camera replacements. These were operating expenses because they're not 5-year life, or some of them could be, but they're really not the threshold, the $5,000 threshold. So we had to put those in operating expense this year. So we will, moving forward, be doing those projects. So we just kind of squeeze the balloon a little bit, and that expense will hit down the road. But overall, 415,000 favorable in expenses. So 329,000 operating cash favorable to budget year to date. It'll be nice. We'll get out of the red and get into the black here as we move through November and December and get through the busy spring months. Compared to prior year, right on with prior year. Pretty good. I mean, 283,000 favorable in operating expenses in the areas of wages and benefits. Of course, those were budgeted, but that big chemicals purchase, again, that's just going to be a timing issue, and there'll be a savings there ultimately. So in pretty good shape. Switching to the capital-related impacts for the month of October, 642,000 unfavorable to budget. We had a unrealized loss in our reserve fund investments. This not atypical this time of year with the volatility of what's going on with interest rates and such in the market. So we're still positive year to date. I'll show you that, but it was a tough month in October. But APF fees came in a little over budget, which is always good. Year to date, October this year versus last year, 301,000 unfavorable. The big difference, of course, in that unrealized loss. Last year we had a $400,000 unrealized loss, and this year $700,000. So that's the main difference. Tracking ahead on APF fees as well. Looking at year to date, 587,000 favorable. The unrealized gain for the year is 533,000. If you attended the Budget and Finance meeting on Tuesday, Cap Trust explained a move they made within the reserve fund, and that created a realized loss of 138,000 in the month of September. But through the quarter, through the third quarter of the calendar year, we moved 353,000 favorable since inception in our reserve fund. So we got back in the black. Gave that up in October, but we'll certainly watch it throughout the year. But just something to keep an eye on. But we're very optimistic about that reserve fund and with what's going to go on with interest rates moving forward. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that. But 587,000 favorable to budget. With the appreciation in the unrealized gains in the reserve fund, we're approximately 1.6 million ahead of prior year in the capital section of the income statement. 191,000 of that in APF fees. So pretty good shape through October. Talked about it, 191,000. We're still a little behind prior year with 18 less transactions, but with the increase in the APF rate, 191,000 favorable to prior year. And then again, $1.5 million favorable in our valuation change in our reserve fund. So overall revenues over under, we are 916,000 favorable to budget and 1,581,000 favorable to prior year. All right, we're going to move down now that we've talked about the income statement. We're going to talk about our capital expenditures, our capital improvement budget. So in this budget, we've got approximately 9.9 million for capital improvements, and with the completed projects, and I'll show you a spreadsheet here next, with the completed projects and the projects that are PO'd and the anticipated spend, we're tracking at about $168,000 savings to that capital improvement budget. So if you have time, go down through here. I will say we added a couple extra columns per the request of the Budget and Finance Committee, and those columns are the completed project spend percent to budget, so you can see how we came in. We always showed the variance to budget, but you can actually see percentage-wise how we did on every one of these completed projects. The completed projects are highlighted in yellow, but you can go down through here and you can see that. And then we also put an estimated start date on these projects so that we could give some more visibility into that. Good request from the Budget and Finance Committee, who are awesome, by the way. You should come to the next Budget and Finance meeting, December 17th. But yeah, so 168,000, that's how we get to that amount. You can kind of see each project and where we're at. So on to our allowance. So another part of our capital improvement budget is our allowances. These are for unexpected events that happen. 90% of these events literally are repair and replacement items that are on the reserve study already. They're a year away or 2 years away from being fully funded. We just didn't get the useful life that we thought we would have, so they kind of pop up. So when that happens, we have allowance funds to be able to make those repair and replacements. But through October, the first third of the year, we've spent $79,000 of that $420,000, and those items are here. The bulk of that was from the plumbing and the filters down at the pool. We also had a asphalt repair in the maintenance area that we decided to take care of. All right, so it's all about the reserve fund. And so what are we doing in terms of what's the health of our reserve fund? We finished the year last year at 51%. This year with a $9.4 million capital improvement budget, approximately $10 million with reserves, with allowances, we anticipated to be at 47% by the end of the year. Well, all the items in here that are green are positive impacts to that budget. So as you can see, with these positive impacts, you can see that we're well on our way to that 47%. We feel really good about that. So we're in really good shape when it comes to our fully funded balance percent. So, and that concludes my financial presentation.
Okay, board, any questions for our CFO, Director Novello?
Thank you, President Hurley, and thank you for the
Leary.
I said it again. I have to stop looking down the table. Sorry about that. President Leary, I told you I didn't have enough coffee. I mean, thank you, President Leary. And thank you also to Cliff for the compliment to the Budget and Finance Committee that I have the privilege of chairing this year. At that committee meeting, one of the other questions that came up that I'd like you, even though I heard the answer for anybody who was not there and didn't hear it, we hear a lot about open headcount and staffing expense and so forth. While we're not going to question the specific number of headcount and so forth in each area, many of our residents do question, well, we've had these positions open for so long. Everything seems beautiful and seems to be running smoothly. Why fill them? And I think it's a viable question that you and the team answered. I think the context was, what are we hurting, or where is the pain felt by leaving these positions open, and are the open positions that are unfilled right now causing any harm to our operation?
Okay, yes, I'm happy to talk about that. Yes, we do assess our positions, okay? Yes, we put a budget together, but throughout that budgeting process, there are moves that we make throughout the year to combine positions, we eliminate positions. Sometimes we add positions if they're needed. Case in point, IT director, we've decided to make a move there within our budget. So we do make changes. And if you look at the trend of our FTEs for the last 5 years, you'll see that we budgeted 483 FTEs in this budget. I'm sorry, no, 483 positions, excuse me, 297 FTEs in this budget. 5 years ago, we were over 320 in our budget, 320 position or FTEs. So we do look at that. It has decreased. It has gone up a little bit since it bottomed out at 290 in 2021. But that was during the Great Resignation, and we had to adjust accordingly. So we are adjusting daily when it comes to that. But as far as suffering, Todd can get up here and talk about, and he did in budget and finance meeting with his team, which is probably that's been the biggest impact. But it's some of those little things, and Todd's a perfectionist, but there's some of those little things at the courses that collectively are a big deal to him that he would like to address that he's not able to because of the staffing issues. But that's where we feel it the most. We're fortunate in this community. We've got a great natural resource for part-time employees, and it's people that live in this community that care about this facility. And so we have an opportunity there that most businesses probably don't have. And we take advantage of it the best way that we can. But there's certain positions that are just tough to fill, janitorial positions, nighttime, after hours position. I mean, we're a 24/7 operation. So there are certainly places that we struggle, but we do the best that we can and fill in those and try to make sure that we get things done. Whether it's through overtime, sometimes we have to sublet some of this stuff, but we do make moves throughout the year.
Any other questions for Cliff from the board? Any questions from the audience? Any questions online?
Nothing online.
Okay, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, good morning. Jim Scott, 133-818. I have the pleasure of sitting on the Budget and Finance Committee, and was there with the Cap Trust presentation. I'm also not sure what role I play. I guess I'm secretary of the Sun City West Investment Club. And I just want to, so we have numerous revenue streams, APF, our red card dues, sports pavilion, golf, and obviously some kind of a return on our reserve funds. And I guess my one thing, you kind of caught my attention, Cliff, when you said you're optimistic about rates. Everything that I've been seeing, the rates have, we've seen a 75 bips on the Fed funds rate, and we've seen the long end go higher. And so obviously when yields go high, bonds go lower. And that's where part of our 3-year return on our reserve fund has been like 0.4%. I mean, we're not getting anything of a measurable return on our $29 million. And I guess my one thing, I just wanted to bring some color to the realization to the board that we have a revenue stream there that is not being leveraged. And so I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, I believe on the chart that was shown, we had a 15% drop in 2022, and we've rallied since then. You can always take a window of time and pick and choose where you want to say you had a return or you didn't have a return. And you can't just do that. So we have an investment strategy, and we're positioned very well right now because we took that hit in 22. So that's why I say that I'm optimistic moving forward, because for the last 2 years, we've made up all of that ground and then some. So that's why we're optimistic, and we'll see how things go. But I think we are in a good position right now.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay. Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate it. Okay, we will now move to agenda item 4.03. I will turn that over to Director Novello.
Thank you, President Leary. As the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, as I just mentioned, our priority within each of our committees, actually each of our standing committees, the priorities are always to look at certain items, and in Budget and Finance, we always review every one of our existing policies as a matter of course. So we're in the midst of reviewing each of those FI financial policies currently. So I'll give you a quick overview just to say that thus far, we've agreed on no changes for each of the financial policies that we've reviewed. which are 1, 2, 5, 11, 15, 16, and 20. But we're proceeding forward on those reviews, and we'll complete most of those reviews by our December meeting, and we'll come back, if there are any motions, we'll come back with an update on those. So we're in the process of reviewing our existing policies first for substantial, if there are any content or substantial changes to be made. We want to ensure that we allow ourselves plenty of time to head into the next calendar year for the very difficult work and rewarding work of questioning and reviewing the capital and expense budgets that will be coming up next year. So that's why we're working in those priorities. However, we've spent several meetings since September discussing how we want to proceed on our investment policy 12. Before I proceed with that, I want to certify or ensure that everyone understands that for FY12, no motions were made to accept financial policies at our last Budget and Finance Committee meeting. But it should be noted that the Budget and Finance Committee did certify the reserve fund strategy that has been executed by Cap Trust.
Okay,
The annual.
we have need to focus on one agenda item at a time, please.
Okay, this is for FY03.
Yeah.
And in the notes that I have from our parliamentarian and assistant, this certification does fall under FY03. Simply to note that we reviewed the Cap Trust presentation and certified that Cap Trust is working in accordance with FY12 as currently written.
Is this agenda item?
4.03.
Okay, okay.
If you look
Please
at the,
proceed.
yeah, that's okay. I'm going strictly by the notes and by the policies and procedures that I was coached to provide. So, again, no motions were made at the November 19th Budget and Finance Committee meeting, but it should be noted that the B&F Committee certified the reserve fund strategy executed by Cap Trust. The annual recommendation reflects compliance with policy FI12 as currently written.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director Novello on? Yes, Director Hurley.
Yes, in our packet, Director Novello, you've got FI01 that's redlined here. Was this meant to be in here, or?
I believe it was originally intended that we would review that, and the committee has made did not accept those red lines, so we're making no changes at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Novello? Any questions from the audience? Any questions online?
Nothing online.
Okay. My apologies for interrupting you.
No worries.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 4.04, working group assignments for policy FI04 and policy FI12. Director Novello.
Thank you, Jack. That's really the outcome that I began to drift into. So for those two particular policies, and specifically for FI12, which pertains to our investments and how we invest our reserve funds, the Budget and Finance Committee has been discussing at some length how to proceed with reviewing that policy. So we, as a committee, agreed to form an investment policies working group that will be chaired. We'll have two of our members sitting on that, Mickey Jacobs and Rick Ruffey. Will be chaired by Mickey Jacobs. I will serve as the governing board advisor to that committee, and Cliff Swan, as the CFO, will also be the advisor from an operational standpoint. In our packets, we have a number of deliverables. There are a couple of things that really we want to make sure that the governing board and all of our residents understand. Everything will be done in full view of everyone. We understand completely that the governing board and all of our residents are very, very concerned and interested on this topic. This is, after all, our money, right, for lack of a better phrase. So we will work as quickly and expediently as possible, but we'll provide monthly updates to the committee as well as to the governing board on where we stand. So the first thing we're going to do is specifically define what are the components that we will analyze and what is the expected, why are we analyzing those at all? So we'll do that and come back to Budget and Finance in December with that update. And we'll provide an update and a recommendation to continue the working group, if you will, in January. So again, we have a series of deliverable dates that we expect the working group will be able to complete analysis and a recommendation to us as a governing board and to our residents by March. This would be, do we make a change or do we not make a change in how we invest and in those investment policies? Although this is all in accordance, what I just laid out is all in accordance with our working group policy, which is CO5. Although the policy CO5 does not require it, every meeting of this working group that we formed will be posted to board docs, so all of our residents will be able to attend and to listen and observe as these discussions and as the analysis goes forward. We think it's vital, and the chairperson and all of the participants will ensure that those dates are therefore publicized and folks can listen in. If there is, one of the questions that came up subsequently is if we do have a lot of people who exhaust our space, priority in terms of observation will be given to existing members, owner members, to sit in the room if we do have a space challenge. That's it. So we'll be looking at those two particular policies from an analysis and modeling perspective. We'll keep you updated as we go.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Novello from the board? Any questions from the audience? Any questions online?
Nothing online.
Okay, then with that, we'll go to agenda item number 5, which is our filings. Director Novello?
It's the Director Novello show. No. So for our financial reports, the July, August, September, and October 2024 financials have been reviewed and accepted by the Budget and Finance Committee, and they've been filed. This requires no further board action.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any audience? None online. Okay, thank you. Then with that, I will move to section 6, which is board director comments. I'll start with Director Horvath.
Thank you. I have none.
Director Grom?
Nothing to add.
Director Novello?
Nothing to add.
Director Shatton?
Nothing to add.
Director Piaskowski?
Nothing to add.
Director Williams?
Nothing to add.
Director Rhodes?
Nothing other than to thank Director Chatton for the fine work that he's doing. and to say, I'm sorry that you've had to go through this. In all sincerity, you did great. Thank you.
Director Hurley? Okay.
Nothing further.
Mr. General Manager?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, any comments from the audience? Oh, we have one.
Good morning, Tracy Anderson, 132045. I am the president of the Lawn Bowling Club. Excuse me. I'd like to give you an update of the Bowls USA tournament where we were one of the hosts here. It was extremely successful. I can't think of anything, honestly, that went wrong. Anyway, I didn't hear of anything. But there are some folks that I'd like to thank for all the work. This whole process began back in December of 2023 when we got our club to agree to, they voted on to hopefully be one of the hosts of the US Open. After that happened, it was, we had a presentation to the governing board, the then governing board, by Bowls USA President Veronica Sum. At that time, after the presentation, the board that was there came to consensus to move the request onto the governing board for a vote. At that next meeting, the governing board agreed that that things should be looked into and hopefully be one of the hosts for the US Open. After lots of work by some folks trying to find out what insurance we needed, et cetera, it was agreed upon that we were one of the hosts along with Sun City. I'd like to thank our club members. I'd like to thank the previous governing board, for which there are some of those folks still here. I'd also like to thank the previous general manager. I'd like to thank all of our folks who did hospitality, green setup, and thank yous of the staff. I'm going to request more time. Is that okay?
Please continue.
Okay. As far as staff is concerned, there are several that were involved. I requested some swag from Katie, and she found me some, which, by the way, I took also to Sun City, so we might get some folks to move over here, Cliff, wherever Cliff is. And I'd like to thank Russ, Michael, Don, and Carl. Anytime I asked for help with something, a question needing to be answered, or something that needed to be done, they came to bat and helped. And I can't thank you enough. Another person I'd like to thank is Casey. We kept in constant communication about what needed to be done. And I think we only had really one disagreement, and that was on porta potties. For those of you who don't know, the bathrooms over at the outdoor walking track and the lawn bowling facility have a flow issue sometimes. So that is why we needed to get porta potties, and thank goodness we didn't have to pay for them. Bowls USA did. Another person I'd really like to thank is Todd Patty. I'm going to tell you, when this man retires, don't go until I die, please, which hopefully isn't soon. He and his crew rejuvenated those greens, worked those greens, made them, quite frankly, the best greens in my opinion. And I know he's asking for us to have 2 of them regrassed. However, these are 45-year-old greens, and he and his crew worked every day on getting those greens playable. Part of his crew would be wearing headlamps to get their job done because we don't have lights anymore. And there's times that Todd would be out there with a coffee can, sand, throwing sand down onto the greens. So what I'm trying to say is this was a very successful event, and I would encourage the community and the governing board and the general manager to look at other opportunities to where we, Sun City West, showcase exactly what we have and what's available for folks, because it's awesome. One comment I heard, I won't tell you from who, but somebody said, our greens are just as good as anything over at Sun City. I'm going to tell you, I think they're better, because I played on one over at Sun City, and I'm telling you, there's too many holes there. But last thing I would like to say is, I haven't seen any of you sign up for lessons yet. And I'm now a certified club coach. And if you'd like to sign up for lessons, we'd love to have you there. And if you're afraid to take the lessons out in front of the other people who are taking lessons, I can give you private lessons if you'd like, since I'm now certified. However, please don't ask me to give them to you like at 6 o'clock at night, because if you do, you're going to need to wear a headlamp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Kellis, 20. I guess this is just the thank you session all around. I'm up here just to thank all of you for your dedication to the governing board and to our community. I really appreciate. Thank you for reconsidering the Clay Club and glass issues. I know it doesn't mean that it's ever going to pass, but I appreciate you taking that effort to put some thorough work into it. Thank you for that. Also want to say I'm sorry to Nick because I forgot to say he's also on the charter committee this year. Oops. But I wanted to note over at Beardsley, we have a new facility manager over there, Travis. Russ, thank you for giving us Travis. I know he was a loss for your team. We love him. And I just, again, want to thank Carl and Russ both for all that they do for our community. There's a lot. So, and also I agree with the comments made with Todd and his team. I live on the golf course. I know they use headlamps. I see them regularly out there, and headlights in the morning. So anyway, once again, just thank you all for your commitment. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Me llamo es Alan Garland. I learned that with 6 years of Spanish club membership, so I just wanted to use it when I had a chance. I'm here to make a couple suggestions.
Record number, please.
Oh, I didn't say that. Okay. 128145. I could have said that in Spanish, but okay, back to where I was. I'm here to make a couple suggestions, but first of all, the plan is I'm enrolled in Torch and I'm supposed to graduate this afternoon. What I'm about to say here could change the whole darn thing, and I may be back in Torch class again in the spring and you'll see me next year. But let me get to the point. We have what I understand to be about a $50 million capital improvement program, not a project, going on to improve golf courses to make them comply with state laws. That's a good thing. Today I heard us go around talking about space, but I haven't seen, and maybe it's just me, a committee that talks about our long-term space issue. I think we have here, a lot of people seem to agree with me that we have a space issue coming toward us, and solving that problem could be a big thing. And I think that we should have a committee that deals with the strategy, not necessarily solving it, but at least the strategy and talking about some solutions. IT goes in there. By the way, I've worked in the IT field. I worked for a financial services company. We weren't that big, but I had a $40 million budget per year in 5 different countries. And believe me, long-term planning was a big deal where I came from. So that gets me to Cliff. When he talks about the budget, the one thing that I always had to deal with, and because my expense was one of the largest ones in the company, was when I show the year-to-date number, I also had to show a forecast of, is that going to be like that at the end of the year, or is it all going to be good?
Please continue.
So my suggestion there is, when we show the expenses and we show year-to-date, sometimes we're ahead, sometimes we're behind. But what you don't know is where we're going to be at the end of the year. So my suggestion was, could you also show the forecast at year end? Now, here's the last thing to say. When I started in IT, they said, well, having good logic is a good thing, but you also got to have a good sense of humor. So just remember, Cliff, my boss used to say to me, it's only a suggestion, just remember where it came from.
If I could just speak to the space and the long-term planning. So one of the things that we're embarking on with the governing board is in the spring, between now and the spring, we'll be working through a strategic plan, which is sort of the shorter term plan for what the governing board is giving me as a general manager direction to do. And we'll be working through that process the next couple of months here. Long-term, to your point, is what you're referring to is more on the master plan side of where you look at what are the needs going to be in the future? What are the trends that we're heading toward? and working and putting together something that says, okay, here's what we believe is going to be needed in the future, and how do we get there, and that based on those the data that we get from current residents, what we believe that future residents are going to be looking for. But to your point, yes, there needs to be some long-term planning that addresses the space issues as well.
Thank you.
Jim Scott, 133818. Alan, you need to get out of my head. That's exactly what I was going to ask, and I was hoping you were going to give a little more color of, you got the strategic plan, sounds like something by spring. I was kind of hoping to hear a little more color of the master plan. What's kind of our target of starting it and kind of the plan, how's that's going to roll out?
Okay, so part of that strategic plan will be from the direction from the governing board as to the direction moving forward with the master plan. So assuming that which I believe it will be, but assuming the direction from the governing board through that strategic planning is, yes, general manager, move forward and work towards a long-term master plan, that would be sort of the next step that we'll be looking at sometime next year, starting that process.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I will say that part of the goal of this, going through this process, is to have a plan or a set of plans, a strategic plan and a master plan that will both be periodically reviewed, not just stuck on a shelf, and to become a dynamic document that will change as our conditions change, as we age as a community.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, yeah, so great point, President. So the strategic plan, generally we will do a 3-year plan, but it will be looked at every year, because again, you have new governing board members coming in. So each year, I would anticipate towards the beginning of the year with those members, is reviewing that plan and saying, okay, here are the things that the staff has accomplished. So we're kind of removing those items, and then, okay, governing board, what would you like to add? What would you like to modify? So it is a living document. That strategic plan absolutely is a living document. And again, the master plan is a longer, long-term, longer phase document, but it also is as well a living document that we would obviously don't want to just do it and put it on a shelf. We want to continue to refer to it and update it as necessary.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Any comments online?
Nothing.
Okay, then with that, it is 10:42. I will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is, the next workshop is December 13th, 2024, 9 a.m. here in this room. And the next governing board regular meeting is December 19th, 2024, 9 a.m. in this room. And I will adjourn the meeting.